Welcome, everyone, and I appreciate being invited to participate in this expo. I want to warn you up front, there's not going to be any pictures of bearings, industrial parts. We're not going to see any charts, any kind of data. What this presentation is about is to help everybody adapt to more of a virtual sales model. As we can imagine, in the last 9 months to a year, we've seen a lot of different constraints due to COVID. And what used to be a face-to-face sales model for a lot of manufacturers and distributors has been interrupted. So what I've done is I've prepared some sales skills training, some advice, and hopefully this will help you adapt and have virtual conversations that lead to revenue. A little bit about me. I've been in sales and marketing for about 35 to 36 years. I've been really blessed to have been working for very large companies like the Timken Corporation, where I was their sales training manager, Gardner Denver, Frito-Lay, but also a number of small companies. And today I serve a number of industrial distributors here in the US. I've received a bunch of awards, and you can look at that when you get a copy of the slides. I encourage everybody to connect with me via LinkedIn as I post tips and helpful advice for salespeople on a pretty regular basis. So let's get started. Today, what we're going to talk about is how do we engage and grow our sales even in the middle of something like COVID and a pandemic? Well, it starts with identifying who your ideal customer profile is, having targeted conversations, and the way we do that and be really successful is with a pre-call plan. And then we're going to work a little bit on our discovery and qualifying questions, value statements, and then we're going to wrap up. So what markets are served by bearing distributors and manufacturers? I know when I was at Timken, we identified at least 31 markets, but some of the big ones include industrial applications, agriculture, machine shops, aggregates, paper, pellet mills, food and beverage, mining, steel, aluminum, automotive. We've even looked at palm oil plants, sugar mills. So as you can imagine, there's a lot of different applications, and the burden is really on us as salespeople to clearly understand each of these markets and the problems that we help them solve. So what is an ideal customer profile? Well, what you're looking for is if you're reaching out and trying to prospect and get new business, if you're reaching out to current customers and grow your share of wallet, who are the customers that value you most? One way we do that is review transaction data. We can also look at what markets are strong and increasing today, what markets are not. What products and services are strong today in your portfolio? And then value. What customers value you the most? One way we can identify what customers value you the most is a tool that I use called the net profit by customer. What we do with net profit by customer is we add the cost of sale into the equation, and then we calculate the net profit by customer. What might surprise a lot of people is about 20% of your current customers represent over 200% of your profits. Yes, I'm a sales guy, but that's the correct number, over 200%. But stay with me. About 60% of your customers, after we add the cost of sale, is about break even. And then 20% of your current customers right now are profit leaking accounts. You're losing margin every time you take care of them. So what we need to do is run some analysis. And again, you probably have a great deal of transaction data available. What I'd suggest is run an analysis, and very quickly you'll find your ideal customers would be the ones in green, those that value you most, those that are contributing the most value to your bottom line, and then spend your time servicing those customers as well as other customers like them in the marketplace. And then let's look at targeted conversations. Targeted conversations help us align with what we call as the sales GPS. There's an author, his name is Ed Wallace, who started the concept of GPS. And when it comes to sales, GPS stands for goals, passions, and struggles of your customer. So we need to develop a pre-meeting plan. Before we reach out to a customer, probably virtually today in a lot of cases, we need to consider their goals, their struggles. We need to establish credibility, and the way we can do that is with really good probing questions. And again, those questions should be aligned based on the industry that they're in. We can also have data-driven conversations by looking at transaction data for that customer, as well as other customers like them. When I coach sales teams today, for example, one of my teams was going into a very large steel mill. So we ran data on all the other products that we sell steel mills. And then we compared that to the data of the customer that this salesperson was going into. And they had a prescriptive plan. They knew the products that this customer was buying, but they also knew other products that they probably are buying, but from someone else. And then we need to have everything we're doing supported by a very strong value proposition. Value proposition shorthand, I mean, basically it's a clear statement of your value as a person, and hopefully as somebody that's experienced in your marketplace. You have all kinds of insights and knowledge and application experience, but also as a company. If you're a manufacturer, if you're a distributor, what makes your company unique? We need to describe it through the eyes of the customer, and it needs to deliver benefit. It should have action words. Some of the three that I like most are words like increases, decreases, or eliminates. So for example, I know from my past experience with bearings, you might want to discuss, how we decrease downtime, for example. So it's really critical that you have a very strong value proposition. Today, I'm finding myself actually, the research arm of my business is doing voice of customer research for a number of distributors. And what we're doing is auditing the value proposition that they've always used. And as you can imagine, just as we've been forced to change as salespeople, our distributors have been forced to change as well as our customers. So we need to audit our value propositions and possibly tune them up based on the market of today. If you're not familiar with a value statement, it sounds like we help you increase, and then you fill in the blank, or decrease, or eliminate scrap, and then through, and then explain how you do it. But what I really want to do is coach you, though. Don't explain too much, because what you really want with a strong value proposition is to engage the client's interest and have them ask, how are you going to do that? Then you can get into the very specifics of how your organization can serve their needs. So once again, we need a very strong value statement, particularly when we're reaching out and prospecting. And then by the nature of your questions, you can demonstrate competence and build trust. One of the things that I'm seeing with teams today, as we've been forced to participate in more of a virtual model, is they're skipping some of the main steps that they would have never skipped if they were calling on a customer face-to-face. Typically, face-to-face, they ask really good questions. They build rapport, they do discovery, and then they qualify. We need to follow that same process when we're selling virtually. Discovery. We need to determine if the buyer has unmet needs. What we're listening for is problems that you solve. We need to understand, is that problem urgent? How will they measure the impact once we solve it? Are there any new challenges that they're facing today? We need to understand, are they a decision maker or an influencer in the sale? And then once again, Let's really spend some time understanding the customer's goals, passions, and struggle so that we can help them. Strong discovery questions also help you build rapport, whether it's business or personal. For example, I put a few here on the screen, and I believe everybody will be getting a copy of this presentation. But one example might be, I see from LinkedIn, you've been in this role since 2005. What made you want to get into this industry? How has your role changed since COVID? What do you find is your biggest accomplishment in the last 4 to 6 months? Everybody's asking your buyers about what's their biggest challenges, but you should start asking by, what are you proud of? And then maybe ask, is there anything holding you back? And then we need to establish credibility. Again, face to face, I believe everybody that's listening to this call is experienced and they have really strong product knowledge, technical capability, applications knowledge. But the sad reality is over 50% of salespeople have never received sales training. So I'm hoping that when we're covering some of these strong discovery questions, it really helps you better serve your clients. So discovery questions that establish credibility could sound like, my other clients in the aerospace industry share that, whatever the challenge is, are you experiencing a challenge with this? What you've just done is you've helped them understand and hopefully made them feel like, yes, actually this person knows me. Maybe you ask a question like, we've seen the aggregates market has been challenged by downtime. Are you experiencing a challenge? If so, please explain. So again, you have some possible questions here, but what I recommend is you need to establish your own questions that you feel comfortable saying in your own language, so to speak. We don't want you ever using something that sounds like a script. It should be very conversational, but you need to add insights that you've experienced with other customers like them. And then we need to understand, clearly and deeply understand the problem to be solved. There's something called the iceberg principle, and if you're interested, you should Google it. The tip of the iceberg is what most buyers share with every salesperson, but the burden of looking below the surface is on us as salespeople. So for example, let's say we want to get below the surface and really dig into the problem. We might ask a buyer, you mentioned downtime is holding you back. How do you measure the impact of that? I know that when I was doing training at Timken, we even identified the average cost of downtime by industry. I highly recommend you figure out what the downtime costs are for some of your clients. What have you tried to do to solve this before? This is a really critical question to ask. Imagine how your sale would be different if they just discovered a problem or if they've been working on a problem for weeks or months. What specifically do you need to improve? When does this need to improve? And how will you measure success? All of those are really good questions to clearly understand the problems and challenges that you're going to help solve for your customers. And then we need to qualify. Here we need to have open-ended questions. We need to go from very broad to specific and ask questions that demonstrate both your credibility as well as build trust. Trust that you're a trusted advisor in your market, not just another sales rep trying to hit their numbers. I like the acronym BANT. What BANT stands for is budget, authority, need, and timeline. How can we even predict that we're going to close a sale if we don't have those four things? So budget, this one here is, again, one of the tools that I use to assess sales teams. Tells me, does the salesperson have a need to be liked or be respected? If you have a high need to be liked, you probably aren't going to ask questions that you worry will somehow hurt the relationship with the customer. The sad reality, though, is the salespeople who are the top elite performers in the world are not afraid to ask questions about budget. So again, a simple question about budget could sound like, do you have a targeted budget for this project? Or are we helping you build one? We really need to understand the budget. And then we get into authority. Are you dealing with a decision maker, or are you dealing with somebody that's an influencer in the sale? With other clients, we see others involved, like purchasing, quality. Are there others we should have into this discussion? Industrial engineers. Is there someone else you would like to include in this discussion? What we're trying to discover is more and more, particularly since COVID, there's more people involved in the sale. And we really need to identify those people early on and build relationships and have conversations with them as well. Need. We really need to understand the need. Typically, we're about 3 whys and maybe a what away from having a clear understanding of what that need is. So again, I wouldn't be shy about asking a question like, you mentioned heat is a current challenge in this application. How long has this been an issue? And again, you can have your own questions to help you better understand the need on each of the applications that you're helping them with. And then timeline. Some good timeline questions might sound like, what made this something you want to solve now? What is your timeline to solve this? And the one that you really want to find when you prepare your final business case is, what's the cost of not solving this? So let's review. We want to call on our ideal customer profile. Let's not forget to build rapport when we're having those virtual conversations. We want to strategically build business relationships with really good questions. Discover if they have challenges that you can solve, and then qualify those opportunities. Again, I like the acronym BANT, but if you have a different model, feel free to use it. But we really need to understand the budget. Does the person that we're dealing with have authority? What is the need and what is the timeline to truly serve the customer? If we follow the above formula, you're on your way to creating conversations that create revenue. So once again, I appreciate the opportunity to be invited here today. This presentation is a little bit different compared to all of the other amazing thought leaders in this industry. But what we wanted to do was give you some skills, some tools to help you as you have virtual conversations that ultimately lead to revenue. Again, my name is Mark Roberts. I'm very active on LinkedIn. Please feel free to connect with me. My company, OTB Solutions, works with manufacturers and distributors, and we help them improve their overall sales effectiveness. We also have a research arm where we capture the voice of your customers. We found out why they buy from you, how they buy today, and then we help you shape your sales process to mirror how your buyers buy. So thank you once again for inviting me to participate.